Okay, so we were talking a little bit about life on Ripcord. So do you basically just get to know the men in your gun crew?
No. Of course, when you know, they call you a cherry, right? That lasted for about a week. But with everything going on at Ripcord, that went away. But other than that, but basically you're trying to learn where everything is. That first week you're there, in between your primary duty, which is fire support.
Right.
So, and I pretty much had a good idea of the operation of the gun. So nothing was new to me or strange. But the heat during the day, cold at night. I mean, I was lucky enough I had my jacket with me, my field jacket. A lot of guys didn't have field jackets. And they just had a poncho to wrap up in. Because it could get pretty cold. You're on a mountaintop. And there was one period, I think it was the second or third week I was there, we got sucked in. When I say we got sucked in, you couldn't see below the cloud level. It was that bad. They couldn't even fly in. It was that bad for a couple of days. You know, ammo was getting low. The sea rations weren't tasting great. It was only the leftovers nobody wanted to eat, and well, you had to make do.
Okay.
But that was different when you couldn't see down below you.
Okay, but we were still, if the helicopters couldn't come to Ripcord, then the fog must have been up at your level too.
Just about.
Yeah.
Just about. I mean, it's like it popped out of the cloud. But the clouds were down here.
Right. Yeah. But for it to interfere with resupply for the fire base, it would have to you'd have to get a cloud cover up at your level.
Above it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's no roads to Ripcord.
No.
No. They said, well, you could have drove out. I says, there's no driving out. I says, there's no roads. I think the easiest road, or the furthest house they could get, was Rakkasan, which had a road. Not very safe, but they had a road. But past Rakkasan, it was all air support.
Yeah, so you're out there.
You know, either Hueys or Chinooks.
Okay. Now, did you see much of the other units there? The infantry, the other artillery battery, the mortar guys?
Right. There was mortar guys down below us a few feet from where the gun pit level was. There was a couple of them around our area. There was machine guns out there. There was one quad 50. When that thing kicked in, look out.
That's a set of 450 caliber machine guns.
450s.
They could all fire at once, yeah.
Yeah. And then, of course, the mortar tubes, you could hear them. Boom. And you knew something was going to be coming right back. And they were shooting mortars at us, rockets. And they would step them in. There'd be one here, then there'd be one in the middle, then there'd be one on top. And they said, well, they're just harassing us. I said, well, it's awful close harassment. You know, it's All
right. Now, in the official accounts or the published accounts of the book, they suggested that about July 1st, the amount of bombardment increases and it will keep going up.
It did. It seemed like it was 3 or 4 times a day. Those periods were coming in. And we were giving orders. if you weren't on a fire mission, stay in the bunker. And the only time you get out of your bunker is if you had a fire mission or you had a load of ammo come in.
All right. How do you get the ammunition to the bunker, to the gun pits?
On your shoulders.
All right. How far were you from the helipad?
There was a helipad just below us, a small one. But a lot of times they would bring the Chinook in over and drop the load right in the gun pit.
Okay.
And then from there it was divided up between the 6 guns. Made it easier sometimes. Depends on what pit they dropped it in.
Okay. All right. So now did you notice it getting, as we get into July, did you have more fire missions or did you just keep shooting about the same amount?
For the most of the time it was the same amount, and a lot of times they would have 2 guns fire while the other 4 were resting. There was a few times that we would fire all 6 guns, but most of the time it was 2, depending on where the azimuth and the grid was. But we would always fire, but usually it's a minimum of 12 rounds each gun. You might get a pause in between a couple of those to readjust, because if you're not going where they
want the shell.
Where they want the shells, or if you were in too close, they'd want you to back out a little bit. But
okay. Now, did you ever know who you were supporting or where your target was? Or
the only thing we were given was the azimuth, the longitude, the elevation. What charge, what round. Whether it was HE, if it was a firecracker round, Willie Pete.
Okay. Explain what a firecracker round is.
Firecracker round is full of little round, like a grenade. And it goes off with a timed in it and fuse out to your point, and it explodes, and then all those come down, they hit the ground, bounce up, and take whatever's in there. There's the other one, the flechette round, which is little tiny dots like that. That's also on a delay, and they come out, and that's like a beehive. A bunch of bees coming at you. The Willie Pete is a white phosphorus. And then, of course, we have smoke rounds and so forth, and illumination rounds.
All right. Now, were there times when the fighting was close enough to you that you could kind of see what was going on, or see gun flashes?
There was a few times where, if you look at the map of where Ripcord is, and if you take a view out, and there's some pictures that take it out, and some of the hills that we were called the fire run, you could see, well, the smoke and everything coming up. You couldn't see through the jungle, but you could see the rounds where they were hitting.
I guess.
Boom, boom.
I guess you could see the illumination rounds, or at least that.
At night, the illumination, because illumination goes up and then comes down with a parachute.
All right. Did you ever use direct fire? Did you ever point straight at a target?
We were trained on how to do that. On Ripcord, I never saw it being done.
Okay.
But every artillery gun is trained to do direct fire, if needed.
Yeah.
That's a last resort. While I was on Ripcord, I never seen anybody trying to come through the wire. Although, the day they evacuated, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Well, some guys claim they saw him coming up, but a lot of others, including ones who were there at the very end, say no, actually, there wasn't anybody, and there wasn't anybody there afterward. But anyway, yeah. So you would, I guess, the other thing you could use direct fire would be to shoot at a neighboring hill, just kind of straight across at it.
You still, with artillery, you still have to have that.
Arc.
So I mean, some of the close hills we could bring the gun barrel down, but you're not all the way down because a gun barrel for direct fire is going to be like this. But you still have to get that arc in there.
Right, to carry the shell far enough.
The purpose of artillery is to come down on top.
Okay, so did you have, was there a gunner or somebody in charge of your gun?
There's a gun chief.
Okay, and who was that for your gun?
That was an E6 for our gun.
And do you remember his name or?
Bob Simmons.
Okay, all right, and then who were your officers?
Lieutenant Kelso. First Lieutenant Kelso, he was killed on Ripcord. But I got to meet him and work alongside him. I only knew him for like 4 weeks, 5 weeks at tops. And he treated everybody equally.
And at the time, did you know what his background was?
No. I just knew he was a big guy and he loved to hump ammo with the guys. And he's the only guy I know that ever carried 3 .155 rounds. One on each shoulder and one across the back.
And what was he in civilian life?
I found out afterwards that he was an all-pro in college and that he played for the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah. And so they said he's the only, I think, NFL player to die in Vietnam.
Yeah.
But he was just out there, and he could have found a way not to go, but he went.
He could have chose not to go. He could have got a deferment. But he chose to fulfill his obligation. And he did.
Okay.
The sad part was I learned afterwards, before I came home, I actually learned who he was. And I found out his son was born the day he was killed. I never met his son. Although he's been, I guess he's been, him and his mother have been to a Ripcord reunion. But I was never there to meet him.
All right. Now, do you know how, did you see him when did he get hit, or did you see nearby? Or?
He was at FDC.
So it's fire direction control.
Right. And there was a blast wall between the entrance of FDC and the entrance. But the guns were actually lower than FDC. And FDC didn't, that blast wall didn't face the guns. That faced, well, if I was standing in my gun pit, it would be facing to the left. So I didn't see him.
Okay, but he was basically over there when the shell hit that killed him?
Yeah, that shell landed right in between the blast wall and the entrance, from what I was told.
All right. Now, there was another man killed at about the same time.
Yes, that was my friend, who I told you about, the string bean.
Okay, explain. Oh, you told me off camera.
Okay.
So who was he?
David James Johnson. He's a 6 foot. I think he was over actually 6 foot, but I'm not sure on the height. But he would look like a string bean, and he was the first one on Ripcord that met me coming off the chopper, and we kind of became friends there. Although he was on a different gun than I was, and I was on the RTO that day, So the RTO sat in the doorway of our bunkers facing out to the gun pits. He was over on his gun facing out. We could see each other and just listening for the call for a fire mission when a rocket came in. And he was gone.
Mm-hmm.
That quick.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And that, when was that? Was that around, it was very close to, right before you left, probably. Or did you leave that day?
No, I was still there that day. I got hit a couple days later. I'm not exactly sure of the actual date, but I know the 17th of July is when I got wounded the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And Doc says, "Oh, you'll be all right. It's only a scratch." Only a scratch. I had a piece of shrapnel go right through this earlobe, like I had a pierced ear.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Now, was that a medic who treated you, or Doc Harris?
We had our own medic out
there. Okay, you had your own medic. Okay.
And he says, "You'll be all right." He put a big bandage on it. He says, "You're good to go."
Mm-hmm.
This is
Gee, thanks. Okay.
That's all it was.
Okay.
I didn't think nothing of it.
All right. So that's the 17th. Now, on July 18th, the Chinook helicopter crashed. What did you see or hear of that?
Well, from our gun pits, we can see whatever's coming in. Now, there's 2 pads on Ripcord
Mm-hmm.
that can receive stuff. This was a Chinook coming in with a load of 105 ammo. And so that naturally they would go up to the top, either at the pad or drop it in the thing. And it was normal. Everything was coming in as told. And what I heard first was just a pop. Now, I didn't know what the pop was, just a pop. And then everybody started yelling that the Chinook was going down. Well, proper name is Chinook. They call it other things.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, and it came down. From where I was, I couldn't tell exactly what it landed on.
Mm-hmm.
But the fire started, and they started calling for all the guns to bring up their fire extinguishers. And I said, "Uh-oh." And then it started cooking everything off. And they said, part of it's on the ammo bunker, the other part's in the gun battery.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't know what yet that meant. Because they're up here, we're down here, and it's uphill. So several of us ran up there. And next thing I know, they were coming back down from no fire extinguishers. I said, "How bad is it?" I didn't know how bad it was at the time.
Now, did you get up high enough to actually see where it was crashed?
Yeah.
Okay. And at that point, it was not on fire yet? Or was it on, well, on fire? They wanted extinguishers, though. So, was it burning, or?
From what I saw was a lot of smoke.
Mm-hmm.
So there had to be fire somewhere.
Yeah.
Exactly what? But you know, that thing was full of JP4.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And ammo.
Yeah, fuel and ammo. So.
You know, not a good combination.
And it does eventually, and when it explodes or starts to go off, where are you? Could you see it, or were you down below?
I had gone back down to my gun pit.
Mm-hmm.
And then we started getting calls for fire missions.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the 105 battery, they couldn't fire anything.
Yeah.
We were the only 6 guns left.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, as we're going along, your battery is starting. Did your gun crew take anyone get killed or had to be wounded badly enough to take out?
Not while I was there.
Okay.
Okay. Before I got to Ripcord, before I even got to Vietnam, there were 2 guys that were killed, but I never knew them.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I only know that there was 2 more that were killed.
Right.
A friend of mine that actually landed on Ripcord the same time I did, James Cobb. He was in the bunker like I was. We had just finished a fire mission. I'm trying to remember. He got wounded in his left arm. Pretty bad. I mean, he was sent down to, the doc came up and got him, bandaged him up, and put him on the next chopper out. That was the last time I ever saw him.
Mm-hmm.
He never came back. And that afternoon is when I got hit.
Okay.
We had just finished another fire mission, gone in. A rocket hit right in front of the door that I was standing. But I was in the bunker off this way, so basically this side just got shrapnel. And the doc came down and looked at me and he says, "That's it, you're out of here."
Mm-hmm.
And I'm dazed. I says, "What do you mean?" He says, "You're a bloody mess."
Mm-hmm.
I lucked out. I wasn't as bad as they thought,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but I did, they did medevac me out back to Camp Eagle.
And when they're getting you, now this is now pretty late in the things. This is after the Chinook explosion on the 18th. It's after Kalsu gets killed in Johnson. Now we're making it to about July 20, 21, and there's some
22.
22. Okay, that's the day before they actually evacuate the fire base. Okay.
Yeah.
So as you were leaving, were there incoming rounds?
They were
in?
coming in all over the place.
Okay. All right. And so now did you go? Where did they take you? They evacuate you. Did you just go to Evans or?
Eagle.
You went to Eagle.
Yeah.
Okay. And then how long did you have to stay in the hospital, or they just bandaged you up?
I did, and then they shipped me down to Cameron Bay
Mm-hmm.
to the hospital because I had gotten a piece in this eye.
Okay.
So the only eye specialists were down there.
Mm-hmm.
So they shipped me down there. I spent about a week down there going through testing and checking, and they determined my eye was going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to Camp Eagle, stayed there for a couple more weeks, then I went to Rakkasan.
Okay. Now, describe what Rakkasan was like. I mean, how was that different from Ripcord?
It's a lot different. First, you got access by road.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing I ever did was fly in and out on a chopper. But it was built by the Corps of Engineers. And they came in and built it. All our living quarters were underground. Everything. You went down, which had 2 entrances to it, one on this end, one on that end, and in between they built regular bunks in there. Their lighting was kind of poor. It had 1 light bulb in it, so it was very dark even in with the light bulb. But it worked, it was fine. They were a little bit more waterproof, but and all the parapets had nice bunkers and everything, so you had your ammo and everything and powder spread out all around the gun. So there were 6 guns brought in, 6 repaired guns. I don't think there was one gun that didn't have flat tires. So they did. They went through and repaired the guns, did all the work on the guns, made sure the tubes were still good to fire. Because the tubes on a 155 have to be recalibrated every so many rounds. what better time than to do that when everything's in the rear rather than going out to the field to do it. So that's what they did.
All right. I wanted to ask another thing about Ripcord. While you were out there with your battery, were there times when you had restrictions on the amount of ammunition you could use?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
When a fire mission came up, usually the FO determines how many rounds. And usually the first couple are you're zeroing in for effect, and then they would give you a number to fire.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not aware of any limitations. I mean, if somebody needed it, as long as the order kept coming over the, the RTO, you fired it.
Right. Yeah. I guess there were some rumors that at times they were told that you're firing too much ammunition, but at your level you wouldn't even know, because you're just firing the number of rounds they tell you to fire.
Exactly. Whatever comes from FDC down to our telephone in the gun pit is what we fire.
All right. Now, did you stay on Rakkasan for the rest of your tour?
No. I went back to Rakkasan, and I was on Rakkasan till after Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't remember if it was February or March. 3 guns were supposed to go to Firebase Jack down by Camp Evans.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they sent 6 of us down there as an advance party to get ready for the 3 guns.
Mm-hmm.
And we went down there, we filled sandbags, we did whatever to make the gun pit, the 3 gun pits ready.
Mm-hmm.
We were told, oh yeah, they're coming, they're coming. We were there for, I want to say, 2.5 months, maybe close to 3. No gun in sight. They finally came and got us. Now, 2 of the guys went home. That left 4 of us there.
So how did you spend your time? Okay, yeah.
Well, we filled sandbags and everything. But most of the time, we didn't have anybody to report to there. We were it. And the chief of smoke showed up the last day we're there and says, pack up. You're going back to Eagle. Where's the guns? They're not coming.
All right.
The chief of smoke is the chief of the firing battery.
Right.
He's under the first sergeant, but he's in charge of all 6 guns.
Okay. All right. So you go back to Camp Eagle. Did you stay there? Did you get another fire base, or?
We went back to Eagle, and I did not go back to the fire base. See, I still had that little card that says I could drive anything. I was chosen to drive the Jeep up to the pad every day with the mail, 6 bags of ice. When I say bags, I mean duffel bags full of ice. Whatever beer I could scrounge up, Coke, and whatever else they felt necessary to go on that chopper that was going to Rakkasan.
Mm-hmm. All right. So that was your job?
That was my final job in Vietnam.
Okay. And when did you leave Vietnam?
I left in, it was close to the end of July 71.
71. Okay. Now, during the course of your year in Vietnam, did you get an R&R?
Yeah.
Where'd you go?
I went to Hawaii.
Okay. Were you married at that time, or did you?
No,
okay.
I wasn't married.
'Cause usually married guys went to Hawaii.
There was 3 of us that went. We could have gone to Australia,
Mm-hmm.
or we could have gone to Thailand. We just wanted to go back to the state.
Yeah.
But we went back. It wasn't too bad. I mean, we'd go to the clubs at night and sit on the beach in the daytime. It was still like being a...
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we were there for 7 days and went back.
Okay. All right. Now, when you go back to the States, where do you fly out of from Vietnam?
Cameron Bay.
Okay. And where do you land in the States?
Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay. Now, at that point, you still had time left on your enlistment? Okay. So what you land at Fort Lewis, then what do they do with you?
I landed at Fort Lewis and got out of my fatigues. He says, you can't travel in fatigues anymore. So they gave us a new uniform and a couple sets of clean fatigues to take. And I got my steak.
That's right. They serve a steak dinner when you get there.
Yeah. So from there, I went home.
Okay.
I had 14 or 15 days leave to go home.
Mm-hmm.
But I had to go back to Campbell.
Okay, so Fort Campbell, Kentucky?
Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Okay.
So I went home and it felt strange, that time period being home. Of course, it was close to 4th of July. And it wasn't easy being home and hearing fireworks.
It's under the chair, man.
I'll get it before I go. Yeah, I'm still in that mode.
Right.
You hear something go boom, you're ready to duck. And it happened a few times when I was at a store or something. I'd hear a bang. It eventually faded away, but it took several years.
Mm-hmm.
But
I don't know. Had you acquired any other bad habits in Vietnam? I mean, was your language worse than when you left, or?
sometimes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
My mother, what'd you say? And I says, Ma, get over it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you haven't been where I've been.
Yeah.
And she never understood. All she knew was I did come home after she got 2 telegrams. But she never knew what the actual condition was.
So the telegrams were telling her that you've been wounded. And you also get a telegram when your son has died. So...
The thing is, she got 2 telegrams about a week apart.
Yeah.
Maybe a little more than, but about a week apart. She got 2 telegrams. And they didn't send anybody from the Army.
Mm-hmm.
The one who showed up was the minister from her church. Which, good thing, I guess. But, yeah.
Okay. All right. So you have that kind of odd period. You're back home, and all of a sudden you're back in the States, and it's safe. And what you do. And you go to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. What do you do there?
What I did down there, I reported for duty. And it was in the afternoon because I drove my car down.
Okay.
I didn't fly down. I wanted to be able to have some wheels, so I drove my car down. And found where I was supposed to be. And I went into the orderly room. And this private sitting at the desk. I says, I'm reporting for duty. He says, okay. So he went and he got the first sergeant, told the kid, send him in here. So I walked in. I had my 201 file with me in my orders. He read through it. He says, you just came back? I says, yeah. Now I had roughly 4.5 months that I had to make up.
Mm-hmm.
So he looked at it, looked at it, looked at it, He scratched his head. He says, I don't know what I'm going to do with you. I says, well, what do you mean, Tom? He says, I don't have a place for you. He says, but I'll figure it out. I didn't know what the heck that meant. He says, right now, he says, you go find your room over in one of the barracks over there. He says, report back here at 0700 every morning. He says, and I'll figure out where I'm going to put you. I did that for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Still didn't know where I was going. I went 0700, I signed in at the orderly room, went to the chow hall, went back to my room for a bit, went to the chow hall, went over to EM Club in the afternoon or to the movie theater. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept doing that. And finally, one of the training units was getting ready to go to the field for their maneuvers and stuff. So I went over at night and did secure duty until 0500 the next morning when the next... So they got to sleep while I stayed awake, but I could sleep anytime. And the day they were going on maneuvers, First Sergeant came in early. They caught me sitting there. Wanted to know, what are you doing here? The next words out of his mouth, he says, that better be fresh coffee. I always made a fresh pot of coffee before leaving.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get an actual job?
No.
So you just spent 4 months doing this?
Yeah. Well, no, I didn't. I came back over in the afternoon. I swung by the orderly room, and First Sergeant called me in. He says, pack your gear, get down to finance, get over to the quarterly, turn in your gear. You're going home. I looked at him. I says, like he's got 3 heads or something.
Mm-hmm.
I said, what do you mean? He says, you're going home. You served your time.
Okay.
He pulled some strings and got me out of there.
Yeah. Well, by then the Army was reducing in force anyway, and they were giving guys early outs.
They were doing early outs, but what I found out was because I had so much time,
Mm-hmm.
if you had 1, 2, maybe 2.5 months, they would let you go early.
Right.
But I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I got credit for my 3 years.
Mm-hmm. All right. So what did you do after you got back home?
Nothing.
Okay.
I took the rest of the summer off, and actually my uncle worked at General Dynamics in Quincy Shipyard, and he asked me, he says, you ready to go to work? I said, I don't know. So he set up an interview for me at the shipyard. I went down, and the position they were looking for was a shipwright. Well, a shipwright is somebody who works on the ships, you know, installing stuff, railings, doors, anything special. But because I had a vocational training, I could read blueprints,
Mm-hmm.
forwards and backwards.
Yeah.
That's what they were looking for. So I got a job working at the Quincy Shipyard. I worked there for 10 years before it closed.
Mm-hmm. What did you do after that?
I actually got a job working for the Sheraton Terror, for the maintenance department.
Mm-hmm.
for the Flatley Company in Quincy. And I started off just as a regular maintenance guy, and I worked up to taking over. I took over the chief engineer's job in 2 different hotels, not at the same time, but 2 different times. And I did that, and then they phased out the last hotel I was at. They sold the property and everything, and it wasn't going to be a hotel anymore. So I went on unemployment, and then I went to work after that for a new place. It was a retirement condominium. It had independent living and assisted living. So a friend of mine got me the job there. He was the chief engineer. I came in as his second in command. And I worked there for 4 years, from the time the building came out of the ground till, and I left there. And another one, independent living, assisted living unit, opened up down in Rhode Island. He says, oh boy, that's a haul. But actually it wasn't a haul that I was doing like I was doing in Massachusetts, with traffic every day and every night. Whether it was morning or night, it was, and I found out it was the best decision. I'd be driving to Rhode Island in the morning, no traffic. I'd drive home at night, no traffic. It was always going the opposite direction I was on. And I stayed there for 16 years.
Okay. All right. Now, to look back at the time you spent in the Army, how do you think that affected you, or what did you learn from it?
Well, the overall experience, I liked it because it taught me leadership and everything. And I learned not to give up. If you try hard enough, you'll succeed. I feel as though I did succeed. I exceeded coming home, managed to make a life for myself and my family, and retire. I've got too many friends that didn't. A real close friend of mine. This I didn't find out till after I came home. Actually, it was in 1975. He was a good friend of mine. We grew up together, went to school together. He was killed in November of 1968. He had gone into service. He was a Green Beret. And he was on a mission that nobody even knows what the mission was, but everything they do was top secret anyway. He, the chopper he was in took a direct hit. And I've talked with some of the other members of his unit, and they says, he didn't make it. It went down in a ball of fire. I says, okay. I says, why did it take so damn long for it to come out? They didn't find what was his remains or the crash site for 21 years. Now his wife is a very good friend of mine also. We went to school together. Those two got married right out of high school. But his dream was to become a Green Beret. His son was 2 years old when he was killed. Never knew his father. But I've stayed in touch with them over all the years. As a matter of fact, this is my 8th year as commander of the Vietnam Post, named after my friend.
Now, for yourself, you mentioned or earlier that you had some of the sort of standard kind of PTSD symptoms of that reaction to the loud noises and things like that, and that kind of faded. Did you have any other issues later on, or?
I was diagnosed with 60% PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's a given or what they felt. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with 20% for the shell fragments and wounds and scars. And
all right. And then what about your hearing? You were in artillery.
okay, I had to go for a CMP, comp and pen, for my hearing. They diagnosed me and sent me to get hearing aids. And the comp and pen, they says, well, what did you do when you were in the service? Now, they got your whole record. They know what the hell you did. I says, I was in field artillery. This young girl, I don't think she could have been more than 25, is doing the CMP. She says, I don't know what that is. I says, well, you have light, medium, heavy artillery. I says, I worked on all three. She says, okay, what were you? I says, I was everything from an ammo humper to a gunner, assistant gunner, RTO. Oh. She says, why is your left ear worse than your right ear? I says, when you're a gunner, you're sitting on the left side of the gun. What ear goes towards the barrel? The barrel? I says, yeah. Where the artillery shell comes out and it goes boom. Well, didn't you have hearing protection? I says, they give you these things that look like little corkscrews. I says, every time that gun goes off, they go flying. They don't stay in your ears. Well, how did you protect your right ear? I says, when I was the RTO, the radio telephone operator, you have an earmuff on it. Today they have all kinds of hearing protection.
Oh yeah.
But when I went in 3 weeks ago for another CMP, because although they gave me hearing aids and confirmed I had hearing loss, they never put a percentage on it.
Oh.
So I was sent back in and had the test, and the girl comes back in, she says, well, your left ear is really bad. She says, your right ear is starting to catch up. I says, okay. And she says, these hearing aids you got are 10 years old. I says, yeah, and they don't work. She says, she took those, they did the molds for the ear and everything, and they came up with those.
They gave you those, and those are not behaving very well either.
It might be me getting used to it. They said it was going to take a while to get used to them. And they told me before I left, they're fully charged, you should be good for the rest of the day. By the time I got home, 45 minutes later, one was beeping like crazy because it was dead.
Oh well.
So much for charging.
I guess so. All right. Well, it's good that you can still hear me now, so we can.
I can. It's this year. This year is a little.
All right. But it looks like we've kind of made it to the end of the story. So thank you very much for taking the time to share it today.
It's a little. You got a little more than what that senior in high school got, but I'm glad to do it because I've seen so many guys. Not just Vietnam, Korea, never got to tell their story.
or never chose to. So anyway, that's why we are grateful.